So we're going to be talking about modeling better decisions here and how to effectively use technology. Have you ever thought about how you make decisions? Like, do you really think about what is that process that you go through to make decisions? Do you have the answers? Do you hear a problem or an opportunity, and because of your experience, you just jump to the answer? Does it involve making a pros and cons list and specifically going through all the details and really analyzing things deeply? How often do you just go by your gut? Right? We've been doing this a long time. I've got a gut feeling. I'm going to go with my gut. And over time, people will understand that my gut instinct seemed to work, so maybe other people will trust my gut instinct. What does it take for you to trust somebody else's gut instinct? How many times have you looked at some diagrams, some statements, and thought, this resonates with me, this makes sense? You've been doing your jobs, your subconscious is taking all this knowledge that you make, and all this knowledge that you acquire, and it starts to make these connections in your subconscious that doesn't always express itself into words, but maybe somebody else was able to express it into words or diagrams. And when you see that, you go, yeah, that's it. That's what I was feeling. That's what I was thinking. The beauty of that, those models, is now I don't have to share my gut feeling with you. I don't have to share the answers with you. I can actually share with you the way that I came up with the answer. So instead of me having to give you $1 where I lose something, I can give you knowledge where we both gain something. Warren Buffett's right-hand man, Charlie Munger, has talked and written books about how he uses models. He's recognized that he needs to make fast decisions and make quality decisions. And the way that he's done that is by learning how to use different models to take an idea outlined over here and apply it to the new problem, and to be able to quickly take the things that he needs and come up with a solution. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The way that we're going to be going through this is by following Skylar in a not so great day of his life, a fictitious day. Skylar works at a company called BeerMe. It's a beer-to-beer payment system. See, Tim's nodding his head. I've got his attention. While Skylar talks about his day, and while Skylar talks through how he was met with problems and opportunities and came to solutions, I'm going to show you what he's thinking. So you'll listen to him and go, yeah, that sounds good, and then we'll see some of the models that he uses. And intermittently, we'll come back, we'll put him on pause, we'll unpack what happened, have a little reflection period, talk about some of the models a little bit deeper and why they fit that purpose, and then we'll move on with the story. This is not going to be focused on any one single model. We're not going to dive into them deeply, but rather just show how different models can be applied to different situations in life. And this is extremely important for this DevOps conference because the issues that Skylar is going through are actually talking about how he can respond to situations in the DevOps journey, and not just focus on how to solve the problems, but really how to implement that in an enterprise setting to make sure that we're really solving not just the developer problems, but the enterprise problems. So we're going to join Skylar as part of his awakening.
All right, so start with, I'll ask you, what time did you get up this morning? Why? It's kind of early. Huh. What about you? What time did you get up this morning? 5:30. Okay. Well, I usually get up around normal time frame, a little after 8. It's like 9:30. Not today. Today I got a phone call at 4:30 from Sue in support. And she was talking about how our website's down. That's about all I could hear. It's like, Sue, can you please slow down? I don't know what's going on here. Well, before we get too deep into the phone call, let's talk about the company I work at. So I work at it's called Beer Me. It's a beer-to-beer payment system. So if you're thirsty in a bar somewhere and somebody wants to buy you a beer remotely, they can. So go into the app, log on, pay for a beer. I'm sitting at the bar and I get the beer that you bought me. Great app. We do have some internal conflict. It's kind of this pathological environment. A lot of the areas that upper management wants to focus on probably aren't the best. They're like, hey, let's cut waste. But what they see as waste is closer to like equipment costs and not necessarily like the waste of our products. We also have managers going around talking about reprimanding people because we're not doing the things we're supposed to. Hey, that person's not here 8 hours a day. How can we reprimand them? Hey, those people are supposed to be pairing. Let's reprimand them because they're not. So it's a very interesting environment that we work in. Some of us are looking at new jobs. After this phone call, we might not even have a choice, honestly. We might just get let go. Might not be up to us. But we are trying to go through this agile transformation in our company. And we're kind of in that early stage where we're facing some resistance and entering that chaos where this is still pretty new. So I'm talking to Sue on this phone call that she woke me up with, talking about the website's down, and couldn't really understand her. So I was like, Sue, we have this dashboard. What does our dashboard look like? It shows us the health of our system. She's like, what dashboard? Sue, I've sent this to you every week for the last 3 weeks. What do you mean, what dashboard? It's the one that has like a map. It shows like dots and stuff, gives metrics of our health. She's like, oh yeah, that dashboard. So she pulls it up, tells me that there's some green dots on the map, and there's a red dot up where Canada is. All right, well that tells me something. It means that we're not selling beer in some places up north. All right, so at this point, I tell Sue thanks, and I need to get in the office. So instead of going through my normal routine where I have a routine where I finally wake up at 9:30, and it was Debbie's birthday. We have a lady named Debbie. It was her birthday. I was responsible for bringing donuts. I'm just going to need to get in the office. So grab my keys, grab my wallet. We'll take Debbie out. So I just headed into the office.
All right, let's take a moment to reflect upon what just happened there. I don't know that Skylar's story is unique. I'm guessing many of you have probably gone through the same thing. Yeah. What we recognize is Skylar had taken a look at the company, was applying some different models. He knew that culturally, this company had some opportunities. He went to the Western model and recognizes that messages are shot. There's low cooperation. The culture of this company is not where it could be yet. But he also knows that they're going through the process of changing. You just think about the sadder change model, right? We've got the point where change happens. There's some resistance. People talk about this isn't the way it's going to work. And then we dive into chaos. He's aware that this is happening. Skylar knows we're going through this process, and he knows what it's going to take to get through that. But he's also very familiar with what kind of challenges that's going to present as well. There's no guarantee that we are going to come out of this model to that integration point and find a new status quo. But again, this is helping paint his picture of what his expectations are and how he can adjust to it. We saw a lot of things popping through his head, all the stuff he's used to doing, watching the news and getting his coffee and taking a shower. He employed the Eisenhower model. Essentially, the Eisenhower model is taking a look at the things that are urgent and the things that are important. He knew it was urgent for him to get dressed. He knew it was urgent for him to grab his purse. And he knew it was urgent to be able to drive out. On the not so urgent areas, or sorry, the not important areas on the bottom left, packing lunch and getting coffee. There are things that need to happen now, but it could be something that he could delegate off to somebody else. Same thing with the not urgent, right? It's important to eat breakfast and to take a shower, but it wasn't urgent since he'd showered the previous night and he can respond to that. So instead of going through every one of the things that he normally has to think about in a day and think through them, he figured what is urgent, what is important. He focused on that, he made his decision, and he jumped in his car to take off. One of the things that you might not have seen him talk about is what we call the Rumsfeld model. Has anybody heard of this? All right. So there are known knowns, the things we know that we know. There are known unknowns. That is to say, there are things that we don't know, that we know we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns, things that we don't know that we don't know. This is in response to his Congress testimony regarding the invasion of Iraq. This was rather important because we can look at this in different areas and say, what do we know and what do we not know? Right? And when he was asking when he asked Sue, it's like, what changed? He's trying to figure out, what do I know and what do we not know? That's why he's going to the dashboard. That's helping them identify what do we know and what do we not know and what do we need to identify. And there's some different ways that we can diagram it. The diagram itself isn't the important aspect. It's his knowledge of saying, there are things that we need to know and I need to build this up. I could guess and check, or I can systematically build up to a solution. And as I mentioned, we will have these slides available with the presentation, and we've got them on a PDF as well that we can share later. I know that I'm running through some of these quickly. So when we jump into our next scene, the assessment, we got Skylar in the car, right? He woke up, he responded to an event, he tried not to react to it, and now he's having a moment of solace as he's driving to work.
So I'm in the car, and this morning trying to think through what possibly happened. I have all these thoughts going through my head. First, don't know what could happen. We've thought of everything. Just can't believe this is happening right now. You know what? Dwight probably did this. He's always trying to look for opportunities to sabotage us. He'll do nothing to, he just wants to protect his little fragile empire. I know he's behind this. It was Dwight. You know what? These thoughts, it's not gonna help. Maybe we should just move on. We've thought of everything. When I get in the office, we'll roll all this back and we'll just admit that this was a failure. Everything we've been trying to do it's not working. Although we've spent a lot of time putting all these process and tools in place. We've got this. I'm just going to get in the office. I'm going to meet up with my team. We'll figure out what we know, and we'll go from there. We've got this.
That conversation sound familiar to you? Maybe that process that you've gone through yourself when you're trying to deal with something that you weren't really expecting. Now, Skylar wasn't calling out each stage of the responsibility process that he was going through, but you could hear it. You could hear the stories that he was telling himself in his head. And he came to that realization that these stories might tell me part of what's going on, and it might be a reason for what's going on. But the stories that he's telling himself in his head are not going to get him where he wants to be. Going through that process, he recognizes, I'm in denial right now. I'm laying blame. I can lay blame, but if I get into the office and all I'm doing is blaming Dwight, is that going to help us solve the problem? So he went through that responsibility process. And as he heard himself talking through the different stories, he stopped himself, tried to move up that process, and continued until he got to that point of responsibility. The one thing that he didn't do, that many people can do, is get to the stage where you stop. He could have had shame, he could have had an obligation, and he could have just left it there. But he decided, I'm feeling confident about this, I know we can do it, I trust my people, and now he has his head on his shoulders and he's got a great game plan walking into the office. So the first thing he does when he gets into the office is he goes over to see Devin the developer, to find out what's going on.
So I get in the office and walked to the team area, and one of our devs was already there, Devin. And we actually have alerting set up on our dashboards that trigger events when there's issues going on. Well, that woke up Devin. I needed an additional phone call from Sue to get up. So Devin was already in there, was already looking through some of the dashboards and information, some of the logs. And we were trying to figure out what had changed. What had happened? We had no recent deployments. We didn't change anything. We have tests set up. Like, what's going on here? So in our company, in order to handle these types of questions, we write tests. So we wrote a test. We used Cucumber to help us with this, to try to simulate a scenario that was currently happening in production. So what we did know was somewhere there's a thirsty person in Canada that wanted a beverage, and there was somebody here in the States that was trying to purchase a drink for them. So we wrote a scenario around that, and we ran it, expecting it to fail, but it passed. So that was frustrating, because we're like, hey, this is what's going on. So we debugged through the code, tried to figure out more information. We couldn't figure anything out. So we contacted Debbie, our DBA. Hey, Debbie, can you pull down some of these transactions from production? We want to look at the data in the database. So Debbie sent us the data. We noticed that when she sent us the data, we were missing a column. We were missing our country code. So when we insert that data in our local environment, we got to insert it as null because there's no value. That's what our default is. So doing so, we reran our test, and now we got a test failure. So we reproduced the issue. So it seems trivial. We're missing a column. What we need to do to resolve this is re-add the column. So we did that. Re-added the column. We did a little alter script for the SQL. Reran the test. It started passing. So we learned something here. We learned that the process for managing our database migrations probably isn't the best. So we wanted to refactor upon that. So we did some research. We found out there's some cool tools to help with that. Two of those are Liquibase and Flyway. So we did some experimenting, chose one, reran our tests, and we were still seeing that we were passing.
All right, so let's think about that a little bit again. You keep hearing Rumsfeld model coming up, right? What's changed? There's this theme, this model that he's applying as we go through the process. We also go back to that earlier statement that I mentioned. How do we solve problems? Do we guess and check? In situations like this, it is not uncommon for people to panic and to abandon their practices and guess and check and try to make it work and just make the problem stop. They wanted to rely on their training. They believed in the practices of red-green refactor. They wanted to prove that they could reproduce what the problem was and prove that the change that they made worked. Sure, they could have rushed and made a bunch of hacks real quick to see if something works, but they wanted to follow the same practices under stress that they followed in a normal situation. They had the tooling, they had the confidence, so they leaned on that model to move forward. So now they've got something solved, but there's still some things that are outstanding. What has changed? They're a team in a larger enterprise, and they're trying to figure out what has happened, how can we resolve this? Recognizing we've got a data issue, Skylar and his team decide to figure out what the root cause is. Skylar goes to the desk to talk to Debbie.
So Devin and I go over to Debbie's desk and try to figure out what happened, what changed. So Debbie tells us, I'm going to have to look through and see what changes happened the last couple days. And she's not the most organized person, to say the least, so it took her some time. What she found out was there was a deployment that occurred yesterday for another team. And I don't know about y'all, but we have architects where we work. We also have database architects. And our database architects, very particular, like almost OCD. So if we have two products that are doing some similar things, and we have two tables that have similar functionality, for example, a beer event. So if we're handling beer events in two different products, we're going to have a table called beer event. And if we're dealing with country code in both of those tables, we're going to have country code. It's going to be the same name. Not that that's wrong, but we decided to put them in the same database. We separate them by schema. So when Debbie ran the script the night before for this other team, she was in the wrong schema. That was interesting. So we shared with Debbie that we reproduced this locally thanks to her giving us the data. And we found this new data migration tool that'll help us solve this for the future. We want to be able to have the consistency. We want to learn from our mistakes. Debbie was not having that. She's telling us, you guys are the developers, you need to develop, and I'm the DBA. It's my responsibility to do the database stuff. What, next you're going to tell me that you're going to go down to Derek's desk, or the deployment team, and you're going to start doing your own deployments too? I didn't feel like telling her that we were one of the teams that actually did our own deployments. But she was not happy, so we left Debbie's desk almost with this like silent agreement to like just disagree with each other. So at this point, we left Debbie with really no plan of action to move forward, but we had known what the problem was.
So again, probably not something that neither or that any of you haven't heard before. Very common problem. But through his journey, he's thinking, what's changed? What has caused this impact? And he had found the manual step that we were doing broke things. Very common process. One of the reasons that we're here today, right? So he learned that, and he wanted to find ways to solve that. But Skylar recognized that he is a person on a team inside of an organization. And the roles and responsibility that Debbie had just described resonated with Conway's Law for Skylar. Does anybody know what Conway's Law is? Anybody want to tell me? All right, so Conway's Law basically states that the applications for an organization will be built following the communication structures of an organization. So the way that the company is organized is ultimately going to impact the way that the company operates. So when they have the DBAs doing their work and the deployment people doing their work and the UI people doing their work, each different area is going to optimize. But that's not taking a systems view into focus. Skylar and his team are trying to take customer needs and translate them into value and get them to the customer. Their focus is on the customer, and they're leveraging a lot of practices and tools to get it there. Debbie is still trying to follow the org structure in the way that we've always done things. Change is hard. So Skylar left her office and was heading back. They found the solution, but it's still not in prod. And on the way out, he ran into Dirk, the director. And he's got his proposal.
So on our way back to our team area, we ran into one of our directors, Dirk, and Dirk knew what was going on. Well, he knew there was an issue, didn't really know details, so he wanted to get caught up. So he was asking us what's going on, do we know how to move forward, and told Dirk, like, hey, there's two solutions we have. One, we can roll back, and that's what one of the solutions are. What Debbie wanted to do is roll back. So we can roll back, or we can roll forward, and rolling forward would just be introducing the new column and the database. So I proposed both of these options to Dirk. I told him the rolling back option would almost be like the Rube Goldberg machine. All right? We don't really know what it means to roll back, because there was other changes part of that deployment. So we'd have to look at, is there data migration issues? Do we have to, like what all is involved? We might have to do a change to do another change. It just gets really complex. Whereas if we just roll forward, we can just reintroduce that column. And by the way, we found this data migration tool that helps make sure that we have this consistency and reduce mistakes for the future. So knowing Dirk has a military background, but he's also upper management, so he doesn't like waste, and he's very fond of commander's intent. And so he likes to empower his people to make decisions, and he loves removing waste. And so Dirk was interested to learn more. He wanted us to move forward. He wanted to do the roll forward plan. He wanted to know our comfort level. So we brought Dirk over to our team area where we have a Jenkins on one of our displays. Showed Dirk our Jenkins pipeline, explained it to him at a high level of what that means. We make a change, code goes and gets stored in the cloud, and then how it goes through our pipeline. And he was thrilled. To this point, he hadn't really seen much of what we were doing, never been visualized to him in any way before. So he was excited. That helped give him the confidence, and he was excited that we had confidence about our plan of action. So gave us permission to roll forward, which we did. We went to production, started seeing like green dots and no red dots on our dashboard. Occasionally, we're still getting some failed transactions, but those were like declined credit cards, so there's no issues there. So at the end of the day, we were able to solve the problem, and everything was good.
So did you see how he used the models in that case? Up to now, Skylar's been taking models and taking the problems and applying the models to the problems to come up with solutions. With Dirk as director, though, he recognized, I'm not trying to solve a problem right now. I'm trying to influence somebody and help them solve a problem. Knowing who Dirk is and knowing how Dirk thinks, Skylar was able to talk to Dirk in terms such as SWOT. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Common management work here. So by taking his message and putting it in a format that Dirk can very easily ingest and use, he's catering his message to make sure that Dirk can make a very simple decision. He's basically giving him the 2 points to look at. He was also able to take a look at the existing process and explain it in terms of Rube Goldberg, where again, because of Conway's law, the organization is kind of disjointed and we're making decisions based on how the organization is structured, not on what's best for our solution. Again, Rube Goldberg, Dirk understands that is kind of a mess and that this is just the way things are. Going through a SWOT analysis, I understand what you're saying. He was able to get that solution and get the answer from the person in management that he needed, because just doing things right isn't enough. You've got to get the influence and the support of the other people in your organization in order to really see these types of impacts take place. So after they went to prod and the team quickly celebrated, they wanted to have a post-mortem so we could talk about this with the whole of the organization.
So afterwards, after we're in prod, everything's good. We had a post-mortem with a post-mortem meeting, where the real work gets done. And we wanted to talk about what happened. So we had our team, the team that had the deployment, the DBAs, just everybody involved, and kind of had this big retrospective of what can we learn from, what happened, how can we not make these mistakes again moving forward. So it was pretty good meeting. There was a lot of really good conversations. Toward the end of this meeting, Dwight, who was actually on this other team, had spoke up and said, hey, the way that you guys were able to react to that situation was very cool. And you guys are doing a lot of these things that we want to start doing as well. Like, how can we start doing all of this and do it all right now? It's like, well, we helped him understand that all this stuff does not happen overnight. So helped him explain the process that we have, automated builds, and that's just one piece that that's your starting point. And we go from, our deployments go from left to right from environments. We start local, we go to dev, we go to QA, cert, and eventually in prod. And then from able to start getting feedback from production and be able to start reproducing that in lower environments from right to left. And from there, we start able to experiment once we have this set up, and we can start experimenting with new things, new technologies, new ideas and theories. And so with his team not having even an automated build, it's like, hey, Dwight, let's start with an automated build. We'll help you with that. We'll meet you tomorrow at 1 p.m. We'll help you get this set up. And from there, we can start moving on to getting the automated build set up in Jenkins. And we can start iterating on this, and we can do it together. We'll start tomorrow.
Interesting. So we've got the energy from Dwight, somebody who originally Skylar thought was the person that was trying to sabotage them. And Dwight has seen what's working. Remember our Satter model. We're going through chaos, we're starting to come out of it. Dwight wanted to do everything, and we know that if you're trying to do all the things, you're probably going to get frustrated, you're not going to find much success, and you're going to abandon it. So in Skylar's mind, he went back to the 3 ways that Gene Kim has talked about in the Phoenix Project and DevOps handbooks. You've probably seen some of these things in the other talks that we've heard today and that you're going to hear. The dashboards are fancy, the text alerting, the experimenting, automatic rollbacks, A/B testing. All those things are great, but we have to get that solid foundation down first. You have to be able to go from code to prod in a consistent manner. So that's where Skylar focused. He also recognized how decisions were often being made in that company. Remember the conversation with Debbie? 2 different ideas, people are throwing their comments out there, and then we just walk away. Nothing's resolved. Skylar recognized we have an opportunity here. Dwight's interested in doing this, and I don't want to just say, if you ever need anything, give me a call. He wanted to make a smart decision. We're meeting tomorrow at 1. Bring this information. Here's what we're going to get done. So these are steps that Skylar can take in order to make sure that we take the good intention and the energy and systematically move it forward. If we get Dwight on board, other teams will be on board, and now the enterprise is going to start changing their culture and changing their practices. Going back to his team, Skylar wanted to talk with his team and figure out what can we do to even get better for this. Yes, things worked well, but there's constant opportunities for improvement.
So after the post-mortem meeting, we went back to our team area, and the team was excited. People want to be like us, and so there was some fun conversations. Well, one of the developers on our team, his name's Jason. He's a web developer, so he likes to be called Jason. That's cool. So Jason, he's a fairly new developer in the organization, and he had this awesome idea. He's always learning and growing, and he had this awesome idea. He's like, hey, instead of using the data migration tool we were playing with earlier, what if we just write our own in Node? So he had this like high confidence that he could do this, and he probably could. He doesn't come up with these crazy ideas often, and usually when he does come up with an idea, he's able to follow through, and it usually works out pretty well. However, we have a lot of stuff on our plate right now, so I had to tell Jason, like, hey, what if we take a step back? We have a lot of this like web stuff on our backlog right now, like us back-end folk aren't very good with. So we could really use you right now and use your talent on some of the new work that we have in our backlog. Like that would be a better use of your time than playing with some tool that you could just like rewrite. There's already something out there. I'm sure you can make this better, no doubt about that. However, like our team really needs you right now.
So we see another pivot there. You guys pick up the combo move? We're talking about a new developer. In Skylar's head, a model popped up, Dreyfus model of skill acquisition. He's thinking about the process that people go through as they're building up their skills, right? He knows that Jason's a newer developer, and he also knows that he's got a high level of confidence. So he's thinking Dunning-Kruger, right? Maybe he doesn't know what he doesn't know, and maybe if we take this developer and have him write his own application where he thinks he can rebuild a deployment script in Node, we're sure he could, but what are the impacts of that? How much time is he going to invest into that, and what kind of impacts could that have to his reputation? We know about his personality type. All right, we're thinking about that disk profile. What is Jason's personality? Is he the kind of person who's always coming up with these, we're going to shoot a rubber band at the moon ideas? Is he the salesperson that's always trying to inspire you even though he can never fulfill it? He's not. He's the guy in the bottom left. He's very accurate, very detail-oriented. So this was not just another one of his harebrained ideas. This is something that he really believed in. But where are we getting the value for that? BeerMe is not a company that is set up to be building these types of tools. Skylar was thinking about the buy versus build model. right? We've got our core capabilities and our competitive advantage. We may have core capabilities in that JavaScript realm. This developer is very sharp. However, having the best database migration script is not going to help Beer Me sell more beer. If that's the case, we probably should just buy something else. It's going to be good enough, but let's focus the time in things that are going to give us value. We're limited on people. So if your bottleneck is the people that you have, let's have them focus on the things that are going to get the company the most value and not just get the most pleasure for the developers because they're working on something fun. That's why open source projects are often spent, nights and weekends. Those are some fun things that people want to work on. By coming to this model, he was able to have a very good conversation with JSON. He didn't have to tell him, dude, you don't know that much. Dunning-Kruger, Dreyfus, you're going to screw up. Management is going to roast you for this. Your reputation is going to be soiled. That is not going to be an effective conversation. Where we're spending our time can be an effective conversation. So what Skylar did is he just leapfrogged from one model to the next, quickly made decisions, took the output of each one of those decisions and piped it into the next decision that he was going to make. That helped him make a good team decision and a good business decision. And the team was all tied into that, and they were able to head out. So let's just kind of unplug this whole event here. What just happened? Skylar wakes up. He finds himself in a position that he's not ready for. He doesn't want to just react to it. When we react, it's different from the way that we normally work, and we often don't like the decisions that we make. So he leaned on some of the models that he's used in the past in order to go from one problem area to the next. At first, he was solving problems about, what do I need to do today? Do I need to balance and evaluate the pros and cons list every single thing on my normal list? Nope. Urgent and important. I'm going to focus on those, and then we're going to get out the door, and then I'll focus on the next problem. Later, we saw him using models to structure his message to help influence others. What are the models that other people use and rely upon, and how can we pipe our message in a format that they're going to quickly understand and say, yes, this is good, that's bad. And finally, how can we use some of these different models to build upon things and come out with another solution? It's not always problem to model to solution. Sometimes we have to build upon these types of things. And as I mentioned before with Charlie Munger, the models that we use are not going to be predefined. We're not just going to take a look at certain models from today. I'm not going to print this off and you're going to say, I've got the 10 models that we need and now we're good. It's a way of thinking about problems. And what's beautiful about these is you can apply them in many different ways. You can apply models from almost any aspect in life to different aspects in life. When I hear people talk about going to college and it was a waste of time because all I need to do is learn how to program, that saddens me because I thought you didn't take any econ. You're not thinking about the supply and demand model. Because you should be thinking about those things when you're making decisions as well. So the more models you have, the more depth that you have in your ability to make decisions. Along with that, I'd be remiss if we didn't say all models are wrong, some are useful. In the book Metaphors We Live By, they explained that the way that we perceive new information can be very difficult. It's hard to have a new concept in somebody's head because words in and of themselves have no value, right? It relates to something that somebody else already knows. So oftentimes we use physical things that people understand, pre-existing constructs, and use those to compare to a new idea. So if we think about argument is war, yeah, argument is war. We're arguing. If it's war, I'm going to apply the same concepts that I would apply in war. I need to beat my opponent. I need to flank them and come up with arguments that they might not be ready for. I need to best my enemy. This is our mindset when we're arguing. We want to be triumphant. Okay, on its own, that sounds good. Time is money. We've heard that one before. Money is a limited resource. We had it in our pocket. We can see when it's gone. We can see when our checking balance starts to drop or our credit card balance starts to go up. It's a number, it's easy to look at. If we're comparing time to money, we recognize time is a limited resource as well. We only have so much time, therefore, like money, it must be valuable. In and of itself, that makes sense as well. What happens when we compare these two things? If you have somebody sitting at the table with you with different ideas, do we focus on argument as war? Do we spend the time with that person trying to best them? Or do we take a look at the other side of time is money and think, you know, if this person is taking the time to talk to me, maybe it's worth something to them. They're giving me money. Are they giving me money so they can lose? Or do I need to revisit this argument as war model and say, maybe we can actually spend the time together, if they're willing to invest that, to come up to a stronger solution? So what we're not saying is to take these models and blindly apply them, but use them as structures that can help you to make better decisions. So with that, we're going to present a choice for you. You can take the red pill or the blue pill. Does anybody remember what the red pill and the blue pill are for? All right, what is the red pill? You wake up. You wake up in your bed and go back to the way things are. And the blue pill then would be, yep, stay in Wonderland and see how deep this rabbit hole goes. So we've got a red pills and blue pills here. And in Skylar's left hand, those are in fact red pills because the label on the back says they are red. And that's what Amazon told me. But if you'd like, you can have a pre-lunch snack here. We have the models available. They will be along with the other slides that are available for the group, and we have a PDF that you can have as well. If you want to give us your email, we'll make sure to send that if that doesn't get sent off to the larger group. So, thank you.
Thanks.